Have you ever had a book where the premise sounds fantastic? You have such high expectations for it. You go in expecting to be blown away because, I repeat, the premise sounds fantastic. This should be a good book. That's what you're telling yourself. Like, this should be the book I have been waiting for. And then you read it and you're like, the premise is fantastic. The execution, not so much. That, unfortunately, is what I had to face while I was reading The Beast Made of Night duology by Tochi Onyebuchi. Hello everybody, Nora back again. How do I start this review? I apologize in advance because this review might be all over the place because I have so many thoughts and so many feelings about this book, and I figured I would just go straight into, the good, the bad, the could have been better. But before I go into that, let me give you a brief overview of what this book is about. Now, it's set in the city of Kos. Our lead protagonist, Taj, is a sin eater. Now, sin eaters are, I would say, the lower class because they are treated like dirt, to be frank, even though what they do is essential and they were meant to be respected and loved for it. But what they do is that the mages call out people's sins, and these sins take the form of animals that would otherwise kill people. But sin eaters are called to fight these sin beasts when they show up, or Inisisa, as he calls them in the book. And Taj is one of the best, He's reckless, he's rash, he's bold, he's young, he's cocky, he's arrogant, he's funny. And seeing the world through his eyes was very interesting at first. The story kicks off, really, when Taj is called to the palace to eat a sin beast of a royal. And things just slowly start going downhill for him from that point onwards. Now, the sin beasts, after they are killed, take on the forms of tattoos, and then they are tattooed on the bodies of the sin eaters. Now, the more sins the sin eater has eaten, the more tattoos you would see, and the less surface area there is without, free of tattoos. And the sin eaters in Kos die young because there's a limit to the amount of sins you can eat. And once you hit that limit, you cross, and the crossing is a kind of death, like spiritual death, in which case they have to kill you physically, but then your ghost will hunt a town. But like I said, the premise just sounded so fantastical and brilliant, and it's fantasy, it's fantasy inspired by Nigeria. Like, what is there for me not to love? Unfortunately, there's a lot of things there for me not to love. The first being that this could have been one book. I kid you not. The first 60 pages, I loved it. There's the setup. We understood the characters. We saw the world. We knew what the conflict, you knew what the stakes were. And then for another 150 to 170 pages, things just petted out and dragged. And you're seeing his life in the palace. You're seeing him train young Aki. And you're just like, okay, this is going on for damn too long. Because the first book is 295 pages. And the second book is 303 pages. And I repeat, the first book is 295 pages. And 150 to 170 of those pages were just, ugh. And I felt that, okay, do you know what? I could understand that lag in between the story, the need for all those extra scenes, if, all those things will eventually feature at some point in the book. And we're meeting all this young Aki, it's getting invested in their lives, and we're like, there is a connection to this. And there is a connection, but it's a connection that could have been established with way less pages. Like I said, this book would have been solid if it had been one book. One book of about 400 pages, 400 to 450 pages, and it would have been so much better. So much better. But as it is, No. Because the first book was a chore to get through, and then the second book also had some moments where some things lagged and some things dragged, and then it picked up again, and you're like, why? This pacing is all over the place. What is happening? Like I said, like you would think, oh, you're going to run into these characters, which leads me to my second point. There are so many minor characters in this book, and you would think that, okay, at some point in time, they would play crucial roles. Not really. The characters you think would play crucial roles at like the climax of the story, where you're looking forward to them showing up, they are kind of put out of commission, and you're like, I don't understand. Why build up all these characters? Why do so much for all these characters who eventually either do not show up or have some negligible roles? Like, you know something is wrong where you can exchange characters for another character and the story won't suffer. And these are characters that you see in the first book for a short period of time, and then you don't see again until the ending of the second book. And you're like, who edited this? Why? Why should I care about these minor characters when you only give me a glimpse of them for a short period of time, and then you don't even concentrate on some of them? It's just like a sea of faces and a sea of names, and then they show up later and you're like, wait, hold up, was this the person? Oh, okay. But you do not connect the dots with a joy that comes with, oh, I recognize this character. No, it just, everything is just so fucking bland. So fucking bland. And then the villains in this story. These are caricatures. The villains are caricatures, textbook type things with no real motivations. They don't feel real. They don't feel real. They don't look real. They don't act real. One of them wants power because, power. Just because. There is really no rhyme or reason to why he does what he does. He just does it. I'm not expecting him to have a mustache he twirls, like a Bond villain. The second villain, I don't even understand how to explain her, because her motivations are not clear-cut either. She just is bad. That's just it. That was just the only reason. She's bad because she's bad. And then the third villain gets like a personality transplant. Like, the person we meet in the beginning of the story, we understood him, we understood his motivations, we knew what drove him. And then at the end of book one, because for a long time we don't see him, like I said, there's this habit of picking up characters, dropping them, and then picking them up all over again. Like, for a long time we don't see him, and then the next time we see him, it's like a totally different character with the same name and the same face. And all I'm thinking is like, what is the justification? Why the sudden switch? What happened? Like, I know we are being told the story from Taji's perspective, but if seeds had been planted in the beginning for us to see the possible change coming in this third villain, I would have understood it. I would have said, okay, this is the reason why. We saw threads of this, and maybe, okay, these things grew, and that is how he got from point A to point B. But no, we don't see any of that. We just see someone who is kind and amazing and loyal at the beginning, who becomes this monstrosity at the end. And I'm like, what the fuck? And don't get me started on book 2, because one of the villain that pops up in book 2 shows up for like maybe 50 pages. Is this character at the beginning, and then in the end is like, I have had a diabolical plan. This is my diabolical plan. I've been planning this diabolical plan for like forever. And I'm like, we do not give a shit about your diabolical plan. I do not give a shit about your diabolical plan. I just want this shit to be over. I understand why so many people DNF this book, because although it had so much potential, there were so many things that went wrong. So many things. So many. Like, the motivations of even not just the villains, but also some of the characters we see, it's like he thought of them along the way and then they came to him. And then in the editing process, nobody mentioned that, you know what, why not establish these motivations earlier so your readers can see it and deduce it along the way. It's like nobody told him this thing. It feels like a first draft, which is so sad because, like I said, if this had been done well, this would have been a fantastically brilliant novel for me. For me. Because I have to stress that, for me, because this book did not work for me. It might work for you, but it did not work for me. So as I was saying, there are no clear-cut motivations. Characters just act willy-nilly, and then it's later that you find out, and then they explain to you that, oh, this was my motivation. And sometimes it just becomes like an info dump. And then here is something that happened in both books. The endings of both books were rushed. Although, to be fair, the ending of book 2 was not as rushed as book 1. Like I said, book 1 had this long period where nothing was really happening. And then the last 35 pages, boom, everything was happening left, right, center. And you're like, okay, am I meant to start caring now? Everything was so rushed at the end of book 1. And then book 2, they added maybe like an extra 15 pages, so everything was rushed in the last 50 pages, and which is so sad because you have characters, like things are brought up, like solutions to problems are brought up, and then it's like everybody forgets that this solution was mentioned, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have a great idea, or remember this time when you thought this, and I'm like, yes, you should have thought of this ages ago. What is happening? Why is this happening? The last problems I had with this were more like pet peeves. The first is that this is a book set in Nigeria, inspired by Nigeria. It's an African setting, and then you're reading the book and you come across a character who is described as having blonde hair, blue eyes, and then his name is Kolade, and you're like, a Yoruba name for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man. This is interesting. So, yes, you just be reading the book, you're seeing the characters, and then the description comes and you're like, I'm sorry, wait a minute, hold up. I think it pulls from the story, because this is set in, like, it's inspired by Nigeria, yes, but it has this historical feel. So, it's not like, oh, okay, maybe like foreigners have come in and settled and married, and that is why this guy has blonde hair and blue eyes and everything else. Maybe his father is white, his mother is African. No, none of that happened. Like, this, sure, like, you have some migrating tribes and everything else, but the city, of course, where this all happens is a walled city. And entry into the city is pretty limited and restricted. So it's not like, oh, they were marrying like people from other tribes and stuff. No, but this character just has blonde hair and blue eyes, and I'm confused. It takes away from the story. I found it very jarring. And another pet peeve I had, which is a pretty big one for me, is that when I'm reading a story set in Africa or inspired by Africa, and is written by someone who has not spent an extensive amount of time in Africa, I can tell, because it reads that way. Like, people are like, oh, it's inspired, so you go into the book expecting to see things that are familiar, and some of them are, but then there are some things that you run into, some words, some turns of phrases, and you're like, but this is not how this is used. It's not what this means. Like, you recognize parts of Africa, but you also see it as, okay, this is someone telling this story from secondhand tales of what they've heard about Africa, about Nigeria, and it shows. And I don't mean this, like I said, it's a pet peeve of mine. Like, if you're not Nigerian, you will not understand. You will not be able to really see it, especially if you do not speak the language, if you do not speak Yoruba, if you do not speak Pidgin, you will not really understand the pet peeve. But it helped me understand better why some Russians were pissed and miffed at Libadugo's Shadow and Bone trilogy because it's inspired by Russia, yes, but then there were some turns of phrases and some things she used, and they were just like, this is not exactly how it is. Like, I couldn't see it because I'm not Russian. I've not lived in Russia for any period of time. So I'm just like, oh, this is cool. World building. And then some people are like, no, that is not how it's meant to be. Like, I understand now how they felt. Because, for example, there's a part where he's having a conversation with somebody and then it's called Olodo. That's Taj is called Olodo. And he's like, what does Olodo mean? And then the person goes, oh, it means owners of zeros. Like, that means someone who has nothing to lose. And I'm like, no. That is not what Olodo means. Olodo means an idiot, like someone who is an absolute and complete dunce. That is what Olodo means, right? But I could see why that was the interpretation given to it, because Yoruba is a very interesting language. Olodo broken down means Oni Odo, which means Oni, that's someone who owns. Odo is zero. So if you take it literally, you think, oh, someone who owns a lot of zeros. But no, like the language itself is interesting like that. But I'm like, that's not what it means. And then I pull it and I'm like, why? What the heck? And then there was some point where they met, Taki was telling them that it's going to pafuka their heads. And I'm like, no. Pafuka is a Nigerian slang that means like when something stops working, you know, something packs up and stops working, it's totally and completely damaged. That's what pafuka means. But the way he's using it, but the way it was used here, just like I said, it's a personal pet peeve, right? And it's just my personal pet peeve. And a personal pet peeve that I know that, oh, Nigerians who grew up here, who know the slangs and these words, when they run into would also like be like, not it. But if you're not Nigerian, you totally and probably would miss it, and it will be lucky you. Now, I know I've spent so long talking about what I did not like about the book, but I will admit there are some things I did enjoy about the book, and I'm going to go into it now. So, yes. The first being the magic system. I found the magic system very interesting because this is a magic system based off algebra. I'm serious, like, their magic, their understanding the universe, they are being able to use the energy, the power, the magic of the universe is based off of mathematical theorem. Like, you would read the mathematical theorem and that is how they try to explain the magic system. I found it fascinating and unique, very unique. The only problem for me is that I do not like math. I was not a fan of math in school, and it was kind of jarring for me to run into like 2 paragraphs of math theorems, and I'm like, my eyes crossed, and I'm like, oh shit, they've lost me. I do not understand or know what is going on. But if you're a math nerd, you will get a kick out of the magic system in this book. If you're not even a math nerd, but like me, you actually do like looking for more interesting ways of looking at magic and all of that, you will also get a kick out of the magic system in this book. It's unique, it's brilliant. I enjoyed it, even though half the time it was like they were speaking gibberish, because math was never my strong suit. And all I was thinking is that I left this like 10-12 years ago. Why am I still dealing with math again? Like, why? The setup, the world building was done fairly quickly. So it's a book you will quickly get into. That is a plus for me. I also actually enjoyed Taj for the most part. Like, we could see who he was. We could see the fact that he was cocky and brash and arrogant and funny and really did not take life. Like, he was one of those people that used humor to deal with life, and he was really, really good at what he did, which kind of like made him even more cocky, but it was understandable. And he was also the de facto leader of the group of young Akis. I say young Akis, which is hilarious because they are not old Akis. Like I said, they die young. Taj is one of the oldest in that city. And he looks after them, but he likes to pretend that he's not looking after their best interests. He comes up with ideas on how to help the younger ones, like, oh, coming up with their dagger day, or like, you know, helping somebody see their sister's jeweling ceremony. And because he does not want to, like, you know, spoil his I'm a hard boy, bad boy, I have no feelings or cares or concerns image. It lets everybody believe that it's Bo that comes up with all of these things. But he's a big softie. And so you love him because he is a big softie. For a while there, he reminded me of Kaz, Brecker, but a way nicer Kaz. He was just young and reckless and a typical teenager, which was something I appreciated. You could totally get it that this boy was a 17-year-old boy. He acted like a 17-year-old boy. Another thing that worked for me with this book was the found family trope. Like, I love found family. It's something I look for in a lot of books. Like, if I see it in a book and it's done well, I really, 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 it makes me love the book even more, because I believe that family is not just biological. We also make our own families, and sometimes the family we make are even stronger than the ones that birthed us. And I like seeing depictions of that in fiction. And this book starts out so well with that. Like, you could see the Aki, they were a family. Bo and Taj were taking care of them. They were looking after them. The younger ones look up to them. It was beautiful for a long time. And then, like I said, Taj had to move to the wall, and then there was another set of Aki. Unfortunately, I didn't really see the found family with those ones as I did with the first set of Aki we meet in the beginning. Maybe because in those ones he was training them, and the second set he was taking care of them. But yes, for the beginning, for like the very first 60-70 pages, you get found family and you enjoy it. Something else I enjoyed in the book was the depiction of Islam. Like, their religion, you could tell that the religion was actually Islam, even though it did not come out and say it's Islam. Like, with the prayer 5 times a day, there was reference to Ramadan, even though it was just called fasting. There was the Eid al-Fitr, celebration after your fast, everybody celebrating, you reunite with family and everything. Like, I enjoyed seeing that. I also enjoyed the fact that Kos was based off of Lagos. Like, Tochi has mentioned it several times, and I could see Lagos in some of the scenes, and it made me smile. There was this part where Taj takes a bite of kola nut and his reaction was exactly the same reaction I had the first time I ate that thing. Like, someone is force feeding you bitter motor oil. As you bite into it, the bitterness just spreads and it slaps you at the back of your head and the side of your face, and then punches you in the face, and all you know is the bitterness, right? And Taj's emotional, visceral reaction to that was it was mine. I related so hard in that scene. I was laughing out loud, because I have been there. That has been me. Kola nut it's also called bitter cola, because there's a particular variant of it that is considered bitter, even though the regular variant is already kind of bitter. So just imagine how bitter cola is. Like, no. If you ever go somewhere, someone is like, oh, have some bitter cola, be like, thank you, I'm fasting. No, because that shit will rearrange your world. I enjoyed how it dealt with PTSD in this book, because a lot of characters have been through hell, and their reactions to those situations did read right. Taj for so long was dipped in guilt, and he was always finding a way to cope and always lashing out as a result of it and being moody. And you could see it, the same thing with Arzu. Like, these characters were suffering from PTSD, and given the fact that they were technically in a war, you could see it and you could relate to it, even though I wish he had actually spent more time dealing with that. Sometimes I also enjoyed about this book was also the fact that we went into the toll that displacement takes on people. Because for example, Juba's people are nomads, and it's not like, oh, they are nomadic because they choose to be. They are nomadic because they have to be. And it's there's this constant movement and removal of their lives, and every time it is that they seem to have settled, something happens and they have to move again. And it's just, could see how that is taking a toll on the people, you could see how slowly their emotions start to shut off. They are shutting off their emotions. That is how they deal with loss, the loss of lives, the loss of places they have grown to call home. And then you even have like the refugees who are crowding into their camp, running away from a war that would seek to have them killed. Like, I loved all those depiction. I enjoyed reading about it. That was well done. I also love the fact that this was a social commentary on, you know, the class system and how systemic poverty works, how the rich try to make themselves even richer at the expense of the poor, and how it's so easy for the rich or those who are comfortable to think of those who are poor as less than because of the way in which society sets them apart from the others. Like in course, you have your merchants and your politicians, your councillors, the royal family, all of them live in the palace, right? They don't live where the poor people live, and it shows. It's the reason why they cannot relate with their lives. It's the reason why they treat them as replaceable, discarded things that can only serve one use and one use only. Which is another thing. I enjoy the fact that it also is a social commentary on how the truly rich would always get those who are poor to do their dirty work and will still not respect them for doing work that they themselves cannot handle or work that they cannot do. And then the fact that the books deal with the fact that guilt is self-poisoning, and until you deal with it and admit it and accept it and come to terms with it and forgive yourself, it's going to slowly kill you. Because like the scene in this is actually quite literal. It will kill you. Those are the things I actually did enjoy about the book. Like I said, I wish it had been done better. I do know though that this is Oyebuchi's first novel, you know, and I believe that it would get better because I see the premise for a really, really good story, a really good, well-told story in this, and I hope going forward that it does do it better. Like his next books are better because this is not really it for me. And don't get me started on the insta love romance that we got in the first book and then the second book. Like, I kind of appreciate and I enjoy the person he ended up with eventually. But getting to that point was just kind of for me. But all in all, those were my thoughts. I'm sorry if they were all over the place. This book was kind of like all over the place for me. I gave Beast Made of Night 2.5 stars and I gave Crown of Thunder 3 stars because I think it's a bit better than this. And together, this entire duology, I'm going to give this entire duology 2.75 stars. And that is me being very generous. I do enjoy the premise. I want more own voices fantasy, you know, African fantasy, not just Nigeria. Show me some Sierra Leonean inspired fantasy, Ghanaian, you know, Moroccan, Ethiopian, Rwandan, Asian fantasy, Middle Eastern fantasy, you name it. Like, I'm looking forward to reading more. I do think that this is a step in the right direction because I do know that this would inspire other writers to keep telling their own fantasy stories inspired by home, where they come from, and all of that. Like, I'm just looking forward to it, and I just sincerely hope we get more own voices fantasy novels. So yes, that would be all. Let me know if you've read this book. Let me know if you actually enjoyed this book. Like, let's talk about it. I know I can see the reason why some people would enjoy this book, and the covers are fucking brilliant. Like, look at these covers. You can see all the beasts eating in it. Like, this is a beautiful book. This is a beautiful book. So if you enjoyed it, of course you did. I can see why some people enjoyed it. It just was not a book for me. But let me know. Let's talk about it. If you intend to read it, let me know. Let's talk about it. Whatever, let me know. I want to talk about it. So that will be all. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I make new videos every Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and I will see you soon. Until then, stay passionate, love books, love yourself. Bye.